I pushed the dining room door open and froze. The table was already full. Every chair lined up, polished, occupied. The smell of roast chicken filled the air, mixed with something sharper. Vanessa's perfume too heavy, clinging to the curtains. I looked for my chair, the one I always sat in, the one at the far end near the window. It was gone. Vanessa stood up quickly, holding a serving spoon like a baton. "Oh, Irma," she said, voice bright, brittle. "We didn't plan for extras tonight." I blinked at her. "Extras?" She smiled wider. "Only close family at the table, but you can eat in the kitchen. I set out a plate for you already." The room went quiet for a beat. Then forks scraped glasses, clinked. People looked down, not at me. My son, Darren, sitting right there between his wife and her father, didn't move. He cleared his throat, but said nothing. My hands curled at my sides. I wanted to shout. Instead, I walked slowly toward the kitchen. The kitchen light was dimmer. On the counter, a plate waited. Meat trimmed from the ends, vegetables lukewarm. No napkin, no chair pulled out for me. I carried the plate to the small corner table. Sat down. The hum of their laughter carried from the dining room. A toast was raised. I heard my name once, Vanessa, making a joke about me liking to keep to myself. I chewed and swallowed. The food turned to paste in my mouth. I ate slow, steady. My fork clicked against the plate. I thought of Darren as a boy, his little hands clumsy, always reaching for me at bedtime. He used to drag a chair from the kitchen just so he could sit close, shoulder pressed to mine. That boy was gone. In the next room, Vanessa's laugh rose above the rest. Sharp, certain, filling every space. She leaned close to Darren, touched his arm. Next month, I heard her say, "This place will look so different." My chest tightened. I put my fork down, listened harder. A man's voice, her father's. I thought asked something about renovations. She answered, "Once the deed's sorted, we'll be ready to knock down walls." I held the plate in both hands. For a moment I thought I might drop it, just let it smash. But I didn't. I carried it back to the sink, washed it clean, dried it with the edge of my sleeve. I stayed standing my back to the door, the sounds of clinking glasses behind me. My heart beat steady, not fast. I realized something, then not that I was powerless, but that they wanted me to believe I was. I walked down the hall to my room, shut the door, and sat on the bed. In the drawer of my nightstand lay an envelope I hadn't touched in years. I slid it out, placed it on my lap, and rested my hand over the heavy paper. The voices from the dining room swelled again, laughter, loud, sharp, careless. I pressed the envelope flat against my knee and waited. I dumped the last of the food into the trash. Cold potatoes, dry chicken. The plate had sat too long. I didn't finish it. I rinsed it under lukewarm water, rolled up my sleeves, and started scrubbing. No one came in. No one asked if I was done. The sink dripped in rhythm with the laughter from the other room. I opened the lower cabinet to grab my mug, the chipped one with the faded lighthouse. Gone. I checked the top shelf. Nothing. I turned back toward the trash. On top of a paper plate, crumpled napkins and a half-eaten biscuit, I saw it. My mug. Broken in two. Tossed like it never meant anything. Vanessa passed by behind me, heading for the fridge. "It was ugly anyway," she said, without stopping. "You'll feel better without it." I didn't answer. She poured herself a glass of wine, not looking at me. "Darren says you've been sensitive lately. Maybe try not to take everything so personal." I gripped the edge of the counter. She kept going. "It's not like we don't appreciate you. You raised a good man. But we need space now, Irma. Real space." She walked out before I could breathe deep enough to speak. I took a new mug from the far corner, one of those souvenir ones with a cartoon crab, and made myself a cup of coffee. The cheap kind, instant bitter. I stirred it slow, then carried it to the back door. The porch light was off. I sat just inside the doorway where the tile met the wood. My knees ached, but I didn't move. Outside, the cicadas screamed. I listened. The coffee burned my tongue. I liked it that way. Inside, Darren started clearing plates. I heard him clatter them together, careless. He walked into the kitchen, saw me sitting. He blinked. "You okay?" I looked up. He hesitated. "Vanessa's just stressed. You know how she is. Don't take it to heart." I nodded. He rubbed the back of his neck. "She says things, but she doesn't mean them the way it sounds." I smiled. "Of course." He seemed relieved. He left the plates on the counter and walked out. I stood, washed each one. Quiet, thorough. The dishes squeaked clean. I dried them with the towel she always left half folded. I placed each fork and spoon where it belonged, wiped the counters, put the chairs back in line. The kitchen was mine once. Now it smelled like vanilla candles and floor polish. I moved to the laundry room, dug behind the stacked linens, found the canvas pouch I hadn't touched in years. Still there, zipper stiff, but it opened. I ran my fingers along the edge of the documents inside. Thick paper. Original ink. Signatures I could still trace by memory. I zipped it shut and held it to my chest for a moment. They thought they'd erased me, but I was still here. And I remembered everything. I opened my bedroom door and stopped. The dresser had been pushed against the opposite wall. My reading lamp gone. The quilt I made after Darren was born folded and stuffed into a plastic bin. My nightstand emptied, drawers open, the photo of me and Harold at the pier missing. I stood in the doorway, hands clenched. My suitcase was half zipped on the bed, like someone had started packing it for me. Vanessa walked by holding a measuring tape and a clipboard. "Oh," she said, barely glancing up. "I meant to catch you. We had a decorator over this morning. Just getting a head start on the layout. I didn't speak." She walked in, pointed at the ceiling. "This room gets good light. Might be perfect for the nursery once the renovation's done. Open it up. Tear down this wall," she tapped, "and connect it to the guest bath. My bed, my wall, my bathroom. Don't worry," she added. "We'll move your things to the garage for now. Darren thinks it'll be more private." She stepped back out. I heard her heels click down the hallway. Then voices. From the kitchen. "Once the deed's sorted, we can knock that wall down and start demo." Darren. His voice. Calm. Certain. I sat on the edge of the stripped bed. There was no trace of me left in the room. My sweater drawer emptied. My books boxed. The curtains had been changed, soft gray, not mine. I walked to the closet. Everything was rearranged. My clothes pushed to the side. Some missing. My shoes in a different bin. My scarf, the one Harold gave me for our 25th, gone. I leaned down, pulled the suitcase fully open. Inside a stack of folded towels, not mine. Underneath a new baby blanket. Tags still on. I closed it and stood there a while. The light in the room felt different. Colder. I walked to the hallway, listened. Vanessa. Again, she's old school. She'll fold eventually. Darren didn't argue. I turned back. Opened the top drawer of the dresser they'd moved. Nothing. Not even the small bowl I kept earrings in. I checked the closet again. Top shelf. One box remained plain cardboard sealed with tape. I pulled it down, set it on the floor, and opened it. Inside my wedding album. 3 church bulletins. A wrapped frame with my mother's handwriting on the back. Still intact? Still mine. For now. I taped it shut again, carried it into the laundry room, and tucked it behind the bins. Same spot I'd hidden the pouch. My fingers trembled as I closed the door. Not from fear, from clarity. They weren't pushing me out slowly. They'd already decided I was gone. I opened my bank statement and stopped breathing. One line, $4,200 debit. Online transfer. My name. My account. I checked the date 3 days ago. I hadn't touched a thing. I printed the page, folded it, slid it into the back of my notebook. My hands were steady. My stomach wasn't. That night at dinner, I waited until the dishes were cleared. Vanessa poured herself a glass of wine. Darren picked at his phone. I set the paper on the table. "What's this?" he asked. I didn't answer, just watched him read. Vanessa leaned over his shoulder, smirked. "Oh, that." Darren cleared his throat. "We needed it for the baby's room. I didn't approve it." "You're on the account," he said. "And it's our house too, right?" "No," I said. "It's not?" Vanessa laughed. "God, Irma, you really want to split hairs over a few thousand? You live here rent-free. I paid off this house in 1998. Darren looked at me like I was speaking another language. "Come on. We're a family." I stared at him. "Then why didn't you ask?" He shifted in his seat. Vanessa spoke instead. "Because you would have said no. And frankly, we're tired of the guilt trips." I reached for the paper. Vanessa snatched it. "You know," she said, "maybe it's time we got you some help. Memory issues. Paranoia. It's starting to affect the baby." Darren flinched, but didn't stop her. I stood, walked to the sink and started rinsing the cups. The water hit too hot. I didn't adjust it. Just scrubbed. Behind me, chairs scraped. Darren came to the kitchen doorway. She didn't mean it like that. I didn't turn around, but she said it. "She's under pressure." "And you," he paused. "I just want things to be simple." They were. "Before you started lying." He didn't answer. Just walked away. Later that night, I logged into the account and changed the password. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the checkbook. Half the pages were torn. I flipped to the back. The last entry wasn't mine. I traced the writing with my finger. It was Vanessa's. Next to it, a small note in Darren's hand. "Emergency withdrawal. Baby furniture." I stared at it. Not the words, the shape of the letters. How long had they been practicing this? I reached for the other drawer, took out the folder marked Trust, C. Inside the original deed, still signed only by me. I held it up to the lamp, read every line again. My name, my husband's. No amendments, no addendums. They hadn't touched this part yet, but they were circling it. I placed the folder on the bed, sat beside it. I could hear them laughing from the living room TV on something loud and fast and full of noise. I closed my eyes. I forced the drawer open with the old brass key. The lock clicked stiff from years of dust. Inside lay the envelope, yellowed at the edges. My name written in Harold's careful hand. I slid it out, brushed away lint, and broke the seal. The first page, the deed, notarized, clear as day. My name. Harold's, full ownership. No transfers, no loopholes, nothing tied to Darren, nothing tied to Vanessa. I read it twice. My fingers pressed hard into the paper until the corners bent. The second item, a sealed letter from Harold's lawyer. I hesitated, then tore it open. Clarice, it began. He'd never called me Irma. "If you are reading this, it means they will try to move you out. Don't be afraid. The deed is yours. They can pressure, they can lie, but they cannot take what is already protected. Keep this safe. Use it if you must. I trusted you to hold the line." I folded the letter, pressed it against my chest. His voice, his hand reaching across the years. I placed both the deed and letter back into the envelope, then slipped it into my purse. I sat on the sewing chair for a long time, purse heavy on my lap. The fabric scraps around me, silent. The thud of footsteps past the hallway. Vanessa's voice floated through. "Once the paperwork's through, we'll have it all redone. That wall's useless anyway." My chest tightened. I gripped the purse straps and stood. Downstairs, the TV blared. Darren laughed at something Vanessa said. Their world spun without me, loud, careless. I opened the back door, stepped onto the porch, and breathed. Cool air cut through the tension sitting in my ribs. The purse felt heavier than it should. Not just paper inside, but proof. Weight that could crush them if I chose. I closed the door behind me, carried it back upstairs, and set it on the nightstand. Not hidden anymore. Not buried. Waiting. And I knew exactly where it would go next. I closed the bedroom door behind me and locked it. The scent of grilled meat drifted up through the vents. Laughter floated through the open windows. Ice clinked in glasses. The backyard was full, neighbors, co-workers, people I'd never met. My porch, my chairs, my yard. Vanessa's voice cut through it all. Bright, sharp, taking up space like she owned the air. I moved to the corner window and pushed the curtain aside. She stood near the fire pit tongs in one hand, wine in the other, wearing the blue sun hat I'd kept in the laundry room for gardening. One of the guests nudged her shoulder, pointing toward the house. "When's the house finally yours?" he joked. Vanessa didn't miss a beat. "Soon," she said, grinning. "Just one signature away." Laughter. Not polite, real. Someone added, "Hope you've got demolition plans." "I've got everything planned," she said, sipping. "She just doesn't know it yet." I let the curtain fall. I sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope still on the nightstand. My name in Harold's hand, that single truth resting in paper while lies danced below. I opened the small box at my feet, pulled out my old planner. Still marked with birthdays, funeral dates, doctor appointments from years gone. Tucked between the pages, my contact list. I found the number, no name written beside it, just initials RK. I picked up the phone, dialed. 2 rings, then a voice. "This is Ray. It's Irma Calloway." A pause, then a breath. "Well now, that's a name I haven't heard in a while. I need to ask you something, and I need it to stay between us. You still have that property in Mount Gilead, I never sold it. Then you've still got leverage." I pressed the phone tighter. "And if I don't want to sell, just shift control, we'll need a notary. And time. I have both." He paused again. "Is this about Darren? It's about what's mine. I'll drive down Tuesday." We hung up. I stared at the wall. Same paint Darren said was too dull last year. The wall he planned to tear out. The space Vanessa wanted for her walk-in closet. I opened the closet door, dug past the things they'd pushed to the back. My old shoebox full of keys, safety pins, and a folded packet of photos. I slipped one out. Harold holding Darren on his shoulders, son behind them. My arm around them both. We looked like we belonged to each other. I put the photo in the folder with the deed. Outside, a cheer went up. Someone shouted. To new beginnings I stood, straightened the bedspread, smoothed the pillow. Then I walked to the window and opened it wider. Let the noise pour in. Let their celebration wash over me. Let them believe it was almost theirs. I dialed 3 numbers that went to voicemail. The 4th didn't even ring, just a busy signal. Women I'd prayed beside, cooked beside buried husbands beside. They had always answered before, not anymore. I set the phone down on the counter. My hands shook. That afternoon, while I watered the front hedge, my neighbor Claire waved from her driveway. She hesitated, then crossed over. "Heard you're moving soon," she said, eyes darting toward the house. "Moving?" She nodded. "Vanessa told the neighborhood committee you were going into assisted living. Said you'd already chosen a place." My throat burned. "Did she?" Claire touched my arm. "I just wanted to say you'll be missed. But I guess it'll be easier for everyone." I smiled, thinly. "Thank you." She walked off relieved, and I stood rooted to the grass hose spilling water at my feet. Assisted living. Already written off like a chair hauled to the curb. That night, I sat at the sewing desk and stared at the phone again. I thought about the years before Harold's illness, before Darren's marriage, when I worked as a bookkeeper for Wilton Supply. I wasn't just somebody's wife, somebody's mother. I had a desk, a paycheck, a name on the ledgers. I found the old address book, pages yellowed ink fading. I flipped until I found the one name I wanted, Marlene Whitaker. We'd shared coffee breaks, traded casserole recipes. She'd taught me how to spot when numbers were being bent to hide debts. Her voice still lived in my ear. "Don't just trust what they say, Irma. Look at the paper trail." I dialed. It rang 4 times, then a click. Irma. Her voice cracked, but it was her. "It's been a long time. Too long. You sound different." "I am different." We talked in fits and starts. About husbands long gone, children long grown, grandchildren scattered. Then I said it plain. "They think I'm fading away, Marlene. They're trying to erase me from my own life." Silence. Then a low, steady answer. "You still keep records like you used to. I never stopped." "Then you're not erased. You're just waiting." I pressed the phone against my cheek, eyes wet. Downstairs, Vanessa's laughter rose from the living room TV, blaring. I pulled the drawer open, touched the folder, with the deed, the sealed letter, the photographs. I kept everything I whispered. Marlene's voice softened. "Good. Because one day you'll need it. And I'll be here when you do." I hung up and sat in the dark, hearing the house breathe around me. The isolation had a weight, but under it something else was starting to push up like a root breaking through concrete. And as I folded the folder back into its place, I knew the next step would not be waiting in silence. I slid the recorder behind the books in my nightstand drawer. It was small, cheap fit in my palm. I tested the switch, made sure it clicked, silently. 1 button, to start, 1 to stop. Simple. That night, I left the drawer cracked open. The hallway carried every sound. Their voices traveled through walls. Vanessa paced the hallway outside my door phone, pressed to her cheek, voice sharp. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. She's still folding laundry like it's 1982. She laughed. I turned the recorder on. "I told Darren once the old woman's gone, we can refinance everything. Rip out the cabinets, redo the kitchen, maybe even add a deck. Real estate's too hot to wait." A pause. Then, "She has no clue the deed's already halfway done. I just need him to grow a spine." I didn't move, didn't breathe. Footsteps. Then her voice again, lower, closer. "If she gets in the way, I'll call the doctor. Say she's forgetting things. No one questions memory issues at her age." Another laugh. She walked off. I turned off the recorder, held it in my lap. Cold plastic. Warm truth. The next morning, I downloaded the audio to an old flash drive I kept from my bookkeeping days. Labeled it Kitchen Renovation. I made a copy. Mailed it in a plain envelope. No return address. Just the initials MW and her street, Marlene's. She'd know what to do with it. Then I mailed a second copy. To my lawyer. Same street he'd always used. I kept the original, slipped it into a padded envelope, hid it under the lining of my old sewing machine case. Vanessa walked in 2 hours later, sunglasses still on, saw me at the kitchen table, coffee in hand. "Morning," she said, tone flat. I nodded. "Did you sleep well?" She blinked. "Sure. You seemed busy last night, pacing, talking." She stiffened. "It was just my sister. We're planning a baby shower." I sipped my coffee. "I hope you get what you want." She didn't answer, just poured a glass of water and left the room. I waited until her steps faded, then walked to the front door. Picked up the mail she'd ignored. Junk flyers. A utility bill. A real estate magazine folded open to a page on refinancing options. The edge of it was underlined in pen. Darren's handwriting. Equity tap primary residence even if cohabited. I folded the page, tucked it into my notebook. They weren't just dreaming. They were moving pieces. But I had the tape. I had the deed. And now I had their voices exact, recorded, undeniable. Later that night, I made another copy. Labeled it Version 2, Assisted Living. And I started a list. I met him in the back booth of the diner off Route 16. Ray Kendrick hadn't aged much. just deeper creases, slower hands. He slid the folder across the table without a word. I opened it. The first page listed the trust balances. Still active. Still mine. Harold had tucked away more than I'd known small deposits over decades. Enough to live on, enough to fight with. The next page held the original clause. Irma Calloway may not be evicted from the property under any circumstance without legal consent, and only under medical necessity or personal choice. Ray tapped the paper. This is the clause Vanessa and Darren never read. I kept reading. A new draft sat underneath unsigned. It proposed transferring the property to Darren upon my death, or earlier, but only with my voluntary notarized consent. This one, he said, was drawn up by Harold 3 months before he passed. He never filed it. Said he didn't trust anyone to handle it right. I nodded. He was right. Ray leaned back. They'll come after you for it, Irma. They're hoping you won't know how airtight this still is. I'm not signing anything, I said. Good. He pulled a small envelope from his briefcase. One more thing. Harold had this kept in escrow, just in case. Inside, a handwritten letter, dated 5 days before the stroke. Irma, if Darren turns against you, it will not be your fault. I've seen how she looks at this place. I've seen what he's becoming. You will want to protect him. But don't protect what's broken. Protect what's yours. H. I folded the letter slowly, tucked it into my coat pocket. Ray gathered the rest. I'll send you scanned copies. Do not give them originals. I won't. And if they push you to move, they already are. He nodded. Then we pushed back. We didn't hug, didn't shake hands. He just stood, left cash for coffee, and walked out without a glance. I sat there for a minute longer, hands still on the folder. Then I left the diner, drove home with the windows cracked, let the cold cut through my coat. When I walked through the door, the smell of lemon cleaner hit me. Vanessa stood in the hallway, arms crossed. Where were you out? She narrowed her eyes. I texted Darren. He said he didn't know either. I hung up my coat. Then I guess no one knew. She opened her mouth, then shut it. I walked past her folder in hand, placed it gently in the locked drawer under the sewing machine, slid the key onto a chain around my neck. That night I finished the list I'd started. Names, accounts, dates, 3 copies, 1 mailed, 1 hidden, 1 kept. Here's your translated version in English, kept as close as possible to the original meaning and tone. I opened the drawer beneath the sewing machine floorboard and pulled out Harold's letter, the one I hadn't dared to open for years. I tore the envelope. Inside were 3 sheets of paper, thick and firm, the ink still sharp. The first page was a summary of my personal assets. Not an old bank copy, but a report from a separate account opened before Harold passed. My name, an account number, a bank in another state. Balance, 87/320.44. I swallowed hard. I'd never heard of this account. Harold had never mentioned it, but the final signature was his clear as day. I turned to the second page. A copy of share certificates, my name, listed as the controlling owner in Eberlin Holdings, a real estate development company I had always thought Harold only held a small stake in. At the bottom, a handwritten line. Vanessa will think she's the only one watching these properties, but you are the majority shareholder. They'll come to you when it's too late. I exhaled, fingers tightening on the edge of the paper. She was trying to control a fund where I was the primary shareholder. She didn't know. I turned to the last page. A single line written in fountain pen. If our son turns his back, don't go soft. Keep the house. Keep the power. H. I folded the papers one by one, slipped them into a hard folder, zipped them into a pouch, and hid it deep inside the wardrobe. Somewhere Vanessa would never dare to rummage. I sat on the edge of the bed, looked around at the room stripped of my belongings. They thought I was an absence, a stepping stone, a burden too stubborn to fade. They thought I had nothing. But now I knew they were living inside what I still owned. I poured myself a cup of coffee. Black. No sugar. No cream. And I said softly, not needing anyone to hear, "Let's see who moves first." I unplugged the landline and wiped it clean. Then I dialed. First call, Leo Marsh. He handled Harold's books for over 15 years, still listed in my old address book under LM Trust. He answered on the second ring. "Leo, it's Irma Calloway." A pause. "I figured I'd hear from you someday. I need a file reviewed, discreetly. You have the numbers. They're in the mail by morning. You want this quiet, I want it airtight. Then you'll have it." I hung up. Second call. Miriam Dalton. Notary. Retired now, but still sharp. She once witnessed Harold's amendments to our living trust when Vanessa was still calling me Mom. "Miriam, it's Irma. I thought that number looked familiar. Do you still notarize privately? Only for people who never needed me until now. I'll have papers ready this week. I'll bring my own pen." I smiled for the first time that day. Third call, Samir Patel. Former news producer. Helped our church broadcast fundraisers for years. Now freelances for a podcast on quiet stories that matter. He answered with noise behind him. "Traffic, wind, the edge of the world?" "Samir, I need your ears. Are you finally ready to talk?" "Not yet, but I'm ready to record." He lowered his voice. "You want a camera or a mic?" "Just sound. For now. When this Sunday? Not here." "Text me an address." I did. Then I powered off the phone and slipped it back into the drawer. On my nightstand sat the brown notebook. Worn corners, soft spine. I labeled it months ago when the small cuts began piling up, if needed. I opened to the first page. Column 1, names. Column 2, actions. Column 3, dates. I added 3 check marks, then flipped to the last page and wrote, "If they try to push again, call Ray. Deliver envelope A." I tucked the notebook under the mattress, third slot from the headboard. Downstairs, I heard Vanessa's voice rise. Something about bills, about timing, about not letting her drag this out. Darren mumbled something I couldn't catch. I brewed a second cup of coffee. Let it sit. Let the bitterness spread. There was no yelling in my plan. No slamming doors. No begging for space in my own house. Just paper. Signatures. Facts. And if they pushed again, the board was already marked. My pieces were moving. Vanessa dropped a folder on the kitchen table like it was a grocery list. "Don't overthink it," she said, pulling out a chair across from me. "It's just for the remodel. Cosmetic stuff." I didn't move. She opened the folder and slid one page forward. It's a clause. Basically gives Darren the ability to approve structural changes. You'd still technically own the house. It just frees up equity for renovations. I stared at her. She tapped the paper. "Kitchen's outdated. Everyone says so. Darren deserves a space he can be proud of." "Darren doesn't cook." Her lips tightened. "He will once the space feels like his." I folded my hands. "And you want my signature to give him permission. It's nothing legal. Just a step toward a more flexible title. It keeps things simple." I looked down at the line where my name was typed in bold. Irma Calloway, current holder. Next to it, Darren Calloway. Authorized remodel agent. No co-owner. No countersignature required. Just a clean path for control. I pushed the folder back. "I don't sign things I don't rewrite." Vanessa smiled tightly. "You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being clear." She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You know Darren's been patient. Most people wouldn't tolerate this kind of power hoarding at your age. I paid for this house. Every tile, every pipe, every tax bill." She smirked. "And now it just sits like a museum, stuck in 1984. I stood, picked up the folder and walked it back to the hallway. Set it gently on the stairs. "You'd put me in the garage if I let you." She didn't blink. Well, she said it has windows. I held her gaze. Not anger, not shock, just fact. She turned and walked away, heels sharp on tile. I stayed in the kitchen, poured my coffee cold, and sat. Didn't stir, didn't reheat. Just drank. Upstairs, I heard drawers opening. A door slam. Then Darren's voice low, strained. I picked up the brown notebook, scribbled one more line, clause attempt. Denied. Her tone confident. His quiet. I underlined quiet. Then I went to the front door. Locked it. No one was coming in again without crossing something they couldn't walk back. I dropped my keys on purpose. Let them fall between the couch cushions. Waited until Vanessa's friends arrived, then asked loud enough, "Has anyone seen my purse?" I thought it was by the microwave. Vanessa gave a little laugh. She's been losing things all week. One of her friends chuckled. My grandma does that too. It's normal. Vanessa didn't correct her. She nodded. I'm just glad we're looking into options. Darren's too soft sometimes. I smiled. Said nothing. Patted my coat pockets like I was still unsure. That night, I opened the locked drawer and pulled out the recorder. Rewound. Listened. It's normal. We're looking into options. Darren's too soft. I clipped that section and saved it under a new folder, exit plan. Each time Vanessa said something sideways, I made a note. Labeled the date. Added tags. 2:14. Forgot lunch on purpose. Called confused. She rolled her eyes, laughed. Said, early signs. 2:20. Let her find my calendar in the fridge. Voice memo. This is getting sad. 2:22. Told Darren I left the door unlocked. She jumped in. You see what I mean now. They thought they were building a case, but they never stopped to ask who held the file. I played their game better than they did because I knew it wasn't real. One afternoon, I left the oven on after taking out the roast. Not long. Just enough for Vanessa to find it. She gasped loud enough for the baby monitor to pick it up. Darren. She could have burned the house down. That night, she moved the fire extinguisher to the center cabinet. I moved it back. I also moved $5,000 from the hidden account into a second one under the name EC. Cleaning services, a shell Harold once used for tax credits. It was empty for years, not anymore. I printed the ledger, filed it under exit plan, backup living. Later, I dropped a fork while setting the table. Vanessa glanced at her guest and said, well, coordination's not what it used to be. I nodded along. Age creeps in when you're not looking. They laughed. I did too. Then I went upstairs, sat at my desk, added the clip, logged the witness name, circled the date. The folder thickened. My steps slowed. My smile sharpened. Because every stumble they saw was something I placed. And every time they looked down on me, I looked ahead. I poured coffee while they laughed in my dining room. Paper decorations hung crooked from the ceiling fan. The scent of too much frosting and store-bought candles filled the air. My plates, my walls, my silverware. But not one voice called it my home. Vanessa clinked her glass. Everyone. This is Irma. She's the woman who keeps the coffee coming. Polite laughter. I smiled. Tight. Poured. Walked back to the kitchen. On the counter sat a box of custom t-shirts, bright blue, folded neat. On the front, Vanessa plus Darren's home, Wasser, forever. I ran my hand across the fabric. Not baby's home. Not welcome. Not even our family. Just theirs. I heard my name again from the other room. Someone asked, does she live here full-time? Vanessa's voice. For now, we're figuring things out. I picked up one shirt, folded it carefully, laid it inside a box I'd been packing since last week. Inside, 3 copies of the deed. The voice recording labeled Kitchen Remodel. The will Harold updated in 2016. My own notebook dog-eared and full. I sealed the envelope I'd prepared for Ray. Labeled it Deliver Upon Notice. Upstairs, I heard Darren telling someone the garage might be turned into a mother-in-law suite. Eventually, I pulled out the last folded shirt, smoothed the words with my palm. Vanessa plus Darren's home. Forever. I took out a Sharpie, crossed out home, wrote house. Then I packed that one too. Back in the dining room, Vanessa handed out favors. Tiny jars of honey labeled sweetest baby coming soon. She didn't look at me. No one did. I stood by the hallway watching them take pictures against my wall, my curtains, my floor. Not a single photo included me. I turned, walked upstairs, closed the door behind me. The box sat by my sewing machine now. Full. Ready. I wrote one more line in the notebook. Final insult delivered. They smiled. I packed. Then I reached into the drawer and pulled out the invitation copy. Folded it, tucked it into the side pocket, and zipped it shut. Vanessa walked in with a stranger trailing behind her, all polished shoes and a leather briefcase. "Everyone, this is Greg," she announced. "Our real estate agent. We're listing next month." I set my fork down. My hands stayed steady. Greg smiled too wide. "Beautiful property. Market's hot right now. You'll do well." Vanessa slid a stack of glossy pamphlets onto the table. "He's already drafted the listing. Open houses start soon." Darren didn't look at me. He stabbed at his food eyes on his plate. I stood, moved to the sideboard, and picked up the small black speaker I'd hidden under a dish towel. Plugged it in. Pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room, tinny but clear. "Once the old woman's gone, we can refinance everything. She'll sign eventually, even if I have to help her forget." The fork dropped from Darren's hand. Greg blinked fast. The recording continued. "I already forged her signature once for the bank inquiry. They didn't even check. She's dead weight, just a matter of time." Gasps cut across the table. My cousin Clara covered her mouth. I pressed stop. The silence was heavier than the words. Slowly, I reached into my purse, pulled out a thick folder, and laid it flat on the table. "The deed's not for sale," I said. My voice carried in the stillness. "Neither am I." Vanessa's face drained. Darren finally looked up, jaw slack. I pushed the folder forward so everyone could see. Copies of the notarized deed. Trust statements, signed clauses, dates, stamps. This house I continued is mine. Harold's name is on it. My name is on it. No one else's. Vanessa opened her mouth, then shut it. Her hand twitched near the pamphlets. Greg cleared his throat. "I wasn't aware you are now." I cut in. I gathered the pamphlets, stacked them, and slid them back into his briefcase myself. My hands didn't shake. "You'll leave through the front door, Mr. Greg, and you won't be coming back." He nodded quickly, stood and left without finishing his water. I sat back down, looked at Darren, looked at her. The table was mine again, and the trap was only half sprung. Vanessa stormed upstairs, heels hammering each step. Closet doors slammed, drawers scraped, hangers rattled like bones. Darren followed. "Vanessa, wait. Don't touch me." Her voice cracked. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." I carried my mug to the sunroom, set it on the small table beside the window, poured the rest of the coffee, slow steam curling. From above came the thud of a suitcase hitting the floor. Then another. Zippers shrieking. Darren's voice again, softer. "We can work this out. Just slow down. You let her humiliate me. Do you even hear yourself?" The words carried through the vent like they were meant for me. I didn't move. Just sipped bitter on my tongue. Vanessa stomped down the stairs, minutes later, suitcase wheels thumping against each step. Her face was sharp red at the edges. She glanced at me in the sunroom, waited for a reaction. I gave her nothing. She yanked open the front door. Darren grabbed the handle of her bag. "Don't go, please. We'll figure it out." She spun on him. "Figure it out. She just ruined everything, and you let her." The screen door slammed behind her. The car engine coughed, then roared. Tires spun gravel into the yard. Silence settled like dust. Darren stood in the doorway, staring at the empty driveway. His shoulders sagged. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I turned a page in the newspaper I'd set on the arm of the chair. He finally spoke. Voice small. "Mom, what did you do?" I sipped the last of my coffee, set the mug down, and looked past him out at the street where her taillights had vanished. The house felt heavier, but not on me, and for the first time in years the chaos wasn't mine to carry. I sealed the last envelope, pressed the flap down hard. 4 packages. Labeled, stamped, aligned in a row. The first went to the HOA, the recording. The fake signatures, Vanessa's open plans to renovate without consent. The second to the church office. They'd quietly stopped inviting me months ago. Now they'd hear her words in full. The third to the local real estate ethics board, marked urgent. Attached was Greg's premature listing flyer with Vanessa's handwritten notes in the margins. The fourth went to my lawyer. Already aware, now fully armed. I carried them to the mailbox myself. Raised the red flag. Inside the house echoed. No footsteps, no clipped commands, no morning TV blaring at volume 20. I cleaned the kitchen, moved the mugs back where I liked them, took the scented candles off the mantel and threw them out. Her throw pillows, her labels on the spice rack, her framed quote about strong women build strong homes, all gone. I took out the plain linen set Harold and I had used, pressed and folded it smooth. The doorbell rang just after 5. Darren, eyes bloodshot, shoulders hunched, hands shoved in his coat pockets like a child caught stealing. "Can we talk?" I didn't step aside. He shifted. "She's gone. Took most of her stuff. Said she's staying with her sister for now." I nodded. I didn't know about the recordings or the documents. I thought she was just venting. She forged my name. He winced. "I know." Silence stretched between us. He looked past me into the hall. "Can I come in?" I opened the door halfway, let him into the foyer. No farther. He stepped onto the mat. Looked around like the house had shrunk. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For everything." I watched him. Not cold. Not cruel. Just clear. "I'm not leaving," I said. "And I'm not forgetting." He nodded. "I wouldn't expect you to." We stood there for another moment. Just breathing. Just real. Then I turned. Walked back toward the kitchen. Left the door open, but didn't ask him to follow. I opened the guest bathroom cabinet and pulled out the last of her things. Mascara. Cheap perfume. A bottle of collagen pills still half full. I tossed it all into a paper bag. One by one. No rush. Vanessa's toothbrush leaned against the mirror like it still expected to be used. I dropped it in too. I scrubbed the sink. Peeled off her label that read Vanessa's side. Cleaned the glass shelf she'd cluttered with serums and jars. The space looked wider. The air smelled like bleach, not her hairspray. I folded the towels. White. Mine. I had to dig them out from the garage after she upgraded everything to match her theme. I placed them back on the rack, creased, dry, warm from the sun. Then I picked up my mug. It had been exiled to a lower cabinet months ago, replaced by a set Vanessa brought from some boutique. I rinsed it, dried it, set it on the sink ledge where I used to keep it. Simple. White. Faded black letters, one day at a time. I stood there, hand on the counter, and breathed. No voices, no perfume cloud, no footsteps behind me asking why I'd used the wrong towel again. The room was still. I opened the window a crack, let in the late breeze. Behind me, the hallway stayed quiet. I walked through each upstairs room slowly, checked drawers, pulled old linens out of hiding, my house reshaped, not restored, but real. Vanessa's planner still sat in the upstairs office. I leafed through it. Appointments, bills, A note scribbled in red call realtor remind about April window. I closed it, placed it in the bag, walked it to the trash bin. No drama, no speeches. Just one more space cleared. I returned to the kitchen, set the mug on the counter, then reached for the brown notebook. I pulled out a sheet of plain paper. No letterhead. No flourishes. Just clean white space. I wrote slowly. Not because I needed time to find the words, but because I wanted them to land exactly where they should. Darren, you were a good boy once. That boy would have never let me eat alone. I stopped. Let the pen rest. That boy used to bring me dandelions in paper cups. Said they were for the strongest person in the world. This house never needed chandeliers or granite. It needed kindness. It needed backbone. It needed you. I folded the note in half. No signature, no threats, no closing line. I placed it beside the coffee pot, where he used to wait for the kettle to hiss before school, where he once left me a note in 5th grade, apologizing for breaking the window with a baseball. He'd written back then, I didn't mean to. I'll fix it when I'm big. Now he was grown, but broken things still waited. I cleaned the counter around it. Made space. Outside, a car door shut. Footsteps approached the porch. I didn't turn around. Let the paper speak first. Let silence do what shouting never could. I wiped my hands, sat at the table, reached for my mug. Steam rose. Quiet, steady, full. The house didn't feel empty. It felt honest. And tomorrow, it would be mine in every way that mattered. I filled the kettle, turned the knob, let the flame catch. No footsteps above me. No cabinet slamming. No voices asking what time the contractor would arrive. Just the tick of the clock. The soft hum of the fridge. I ground the beans by hand. Let the scent rise. Slow. Deliberate. The kettle hissed. I poured. Waited. Watched the dark swirl settle into the carafe. I reached into the cabinet. Pulled out the mug I'd packed away the day Vanessa moved in. White, plain. A tiny chip near the rim. Black letters across the front. Still mine. I set it on the table. The chair creaked under me. I didn't mind the sound. It reminded me it was mine too. I sipped. No sugar, no cream. Just the way Harold made it. The way I like it. The light from the window stretched across the wood. Dust danced in it. I leaned back, let it touch my face. No noise, no questions. No permission needed. I reached for the brown notebook. Flipped to the last page. Wrote one line. House quiet. Mug warm. Still here, still mine. Then I closed the cover, set it beside the mug, and kept sipping.